Hi everyone, welcome to an Eeve Devlog. In this episode we are going to talk about environment design. I'm still experimenting with different aesthetics to define the final style of my game, but this week I thought it would be interesting to try the Ghibli style based on this scene from my Neighbor Totoro. I use Blender to model the whole scene and render it in Eeve, and I use Substance Painter for the textures. Here you can see the final result. This is not a step-by-step tutorial, but I wanted to share some tricks I have learned this week that I hope you will find useful. I'm going to structure this video in 3 parts: modeling, texturing, and material and shader. So let's get started. Here I will show how you can quickly create a roof with tiles using only one object. Even if the roof can look very complex, it's a very easy and fast process to do. So I'm gonna be using this model I did for my Ghibli style. It's kind of like an Asian tile that I see like in Japan and here in Indonesia and other Asian countries. So I'm gonna start adding an array, and then I want to take care first is the vertical space, and then after that I'll do the horizontal space. So here we want to go, and I'm gonna start by doing the Y, and then as you can see here I can change the offset. So we want to do probably going to the negative space, so it's -1. And then let's see, we are gonna need probably, yeah, that looks okay. So now we have to take care of the angle. So let's see, usually I have some issues with that, but that should do. Let's see, why is not what we want is to follow. Oh yeah, you don't have to edit the angle here. Let's put it straight again. So we want, that's kind of what we want here. And then what we want to do, it's rotated on object mode. Perfect. And we are gonna do something like this. Then I'm gonna reduce the offset because I want the tiles to be one on top of each other a little bit. So instead of -1, I'm gonna do maybe -8, and then add, yeah, that seems okay. So the other thing I want to do is when they put the tiles, it's not perfect like that. So it's each tile has like a little offset in the angle as well. So what I'm gonna do, it's on edit mode, I'm gonna change a little bit the rotation. So like this, you can see already like looks more natural. Okay. So now we have this, and then I'm gonna add another array modifier. So we are gonna take care of the horizontal space. And now instead of 1, I'm gonna do -1. And then we can do, and then we filled out all of that space. Then, to do the other side of the roof, we can do a mirror modifier and take as reference, or the object's reference can be the house. So now we have our roof totally full. Obviously, what I did in my house, in my Ghibli house, is I put another tile here to kind of hide this seam. I guess we could just move a little bit like this, and then you'll have something that looks a little better. Keep in mind that depending on the complexity of your model, the number of polygons can quickly skyrocket. If you're going to use it in-game, and the houses are going to be far away, I would recommend making the roof tiles as texture and not as geometry. In this case, I'm going to show you how this part of the house can be duplicated without using the mirror modifier. So let's say this box is a house, and we want to have this this entry in both sides. We could obviously use a mirror modifier, but the advantage of the instance is I can have like all of these different elements or objects separate, and I don't have to add a mirror modifier for each one. So the way it works, it's you put all of your models, all of your objects in one collection, and then you say you go here and then set instance to a scene. So as you can see, it creates, let me hide the cube for a second. So here we have our instance. That instance, as you can see, it's just an instance. You cannot really edit it or change anything because it's like a virtual copy of here. So one of the good things is when I edit the geometry here, for example, let's do something crazy like this, the instance gets edited too. And the same happens with the UVs. So you can UV all of that, and the instance is gonna have the same UVs. So that, I think this is very, very useful, especially to create environments or buildings or stuff that you need a lot of kind of repetition. One thing to consider is the origin of the collection. Usually, it's the origin of the world. So if you want to create an offset for the origin, what I do is I put the cursor. Let's say I want the origin of my instance of my collection. I want to be the pivot of this object. So what I do, I put the cursor on the pivot of that element. Then you go to the settings of the collections, and here you set offset from cursor. That what does, it's puts the origin of the collection, so the instance, in this point. So it's when you create an instance, it's easier to move it and to rotate it or just to transform. As you can see here, I have the instance. So now we can even hide this one, and then put this one here. Let's rotate it. 90. Zero. And now you can duplicate it. And move it. So this is I think it's a very useful technique that you can use for different circumstances. For example, I can show you, I use the same thing for my palm tree. So in this case, the instance is the leaves. So I have, as you can see, I have just a collection here with my leaves and the heart of the palm, the leaf, And here we cannot see more elements because I parent them to be able to easily move them. But you can see here all the leaves. So to create the rest of the palm, I created instances. So again, for example, I could create another instance of the whole palm, and I could instance the scene and then easily you can create a lot of repetitive elements. And the good thing about using instances is Blender it's much more performant. It only calculates the geometry of the original, and because the other ones are instances, aren't calculated. So you can populate your scene with a lot of instances, and Blender is going to still be very performant. For texturing, I use Substance Painter. For anime and Ghibli texturing, I have learned that basically what we need are flat colors, the texture mask for normals if we want to give more detail, and the ambient occlusion. It's a really quick trick to recreate the brush effect. So as you can see, my wood here is very plain. There is no variation. It's kind of very boring. So one of the things I usually do is I add some kind of mask. For example, in this case, I'm using a mask editor that brings some grunge textures. But as you can see, it's still very sharp, and it's not selling that like brush idea. So we have on Substance, there is I'm going to remove it because I want to show you how to do it. So there is we have filters that we can apply to layers and masks, and so what you do is you select your, in this case I select my mask, I add a filter, and in filter I'm going to select the blur slope. So as you can see, immediately you get this effect that it's more like a watery, kind of more like brush. And if you start to use that in all your layers and masks, you step by step you start getting more like a paintbrush effect on your textures that I think works really good. Another technique you can use is to take the texture to Photoshop, and once there, use the filter gallery to get or accentuate the brush effect. In this case, it's my texture from Substance Painter. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open the filter gallery. Well, first of all, let me do what I do. Is I create a copy, and then I'm gonna desaturate image. Desaturate. So like that we have like a black and white version, and then we can break up this in two parts. We are gonna work first on the edges, and then I'm gonna add more like a paintbrush effect to my texture, and then with the two effects it's gonna look much more like a paintbrush. So we go to filter gallery, and as you can see, I have already selected glowing edges. That's I think it's on, oh here, stylize glowing edges. So that's already, you can see like it's the edges are like kind of very watery, so that really helps to sell like more like a paintbrush effect. So I'm gonna say okay. And then here we can, well, you can work with the blending that works better for you. I found out the linear dodge, I think it's the one that kind of, yeah, makes it very like watery, and then you can always lower the opacity if you don't want such a strong effect. Let's see if the other one, yeah, no. I think this one, to me, it's the one that works better. I'm gonna leave it like this, and then I'm gonna hide for a second, and then I'm gonna apply more filters. So I go back to the filter gallery, and then instead of the glowing edges, I'm gonna turn on the paint dubs. Paint dubs, it's in the artistic or on the brush strokes. I used, let me see, I don't find it now. Oh, here, paint dubs. And this one, as you can see, maybe if I zoom in a little bit, it creates long edges. Now, as you can see, it creates, it makes it more blurry, but it creates like this brush effect. You can play with the brush size to make it more or less accentuated depending on what you want. And on top of that, I use the palette knife. So you can see all these like sharp edges, if you want to call it like this. All of these lines get much more like eroded, or you'll see when it finishes the render. See, it's a little bit more. Again, it helps to sell that idea that has been hand painted. So with both effects, I mean, you have to play with the settings, but you get the idea. So I apply, and then with the three filters, you get these more like kind of watery paintbrush textures that I think can really help to sell much better hand painted scene. The last step is to create the materials and the shader. Keep in mind, the other important part besides the texture is the lighting, the scene adjustments, and the post-processing effects. In this part, I'm still quite new, as I usually do my renders in Marmoset and not in Blender. So I'm sure there are many settings that I don't know that can improve the aesthetics of the scene. As you can see, I only use the base color or the albedo and the normal map. The normal map helps to add more detail. So if I remove it, if I remove the normal map, you can see it gets very flat. So the normal map really helps to accentuate and bring the details. You can see here how all of these like wood parts get more accentuated in the edges. So as you can see, the shader, it's very simple. We have those two textures, and I feel like what makes the whole difference is this node, the shader to RGB, which makes the whole scene to look more like a cartoon. And then I use the color ramp for how I affect the lights and the shadows in the scene. So you can see here, if I modify that, how the light gets, how it changes the light and the shadows. And then you can play with these settings here. And another thing that I think is very interesting to play with, it's for example, here we have really hard shadows that they are very characteristic from the anime or the Ghibli style. But if you want something like it's more soft, instead of constant, here you can use linear or even ease. So it creates, as you can see here, it's more like more a gradual. It's like a gradient. It's not so the constant. It's just from one color to another one. There is no transition. So I hope that helps. I know it wasn't like a step-by-step tutorial. This is not a tutorial. This is a game devlog. But I want to show you a couple of tricks that I learned this week, and I think they are very useful. Next week, I will continue working on the environment design, and I will start making a landscape at sunset or night. My game basically happens at night, and I want to see what limitations and problems I can find applying the Ghibli style with less light. Every Monday, I post a new video about the progress made during the week. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great week.